The ultimate question. Whose competition is truly tougher? MJ's or Bron's? This debate has been brewing for quite a while now. Now before I give an opinion on this topic, understand there is no bias input here. I'm a huge fan of both of these guys. I respect both competitors and what they have accomplished in their careers. However, we're all aware of the naysayers. LeBron has had it easy in the Eastern Conference. Michael hasn't played anybody that great in the NBA Finals. We've heard it all before. So in this video, we will briefly go through their careers to see who's truly had the hardest competition, or simply who I think have had the hardest competition. Now obviously LeBron is still playing, so he's still added to this debate, especially with the super teams that are accumulating in today's era. For the people that don't know, LeBron has had a whopping first round of the playoffs record of 14 wins and 1 loss. His first loss would be to the Phoenix Suns in last year's postseason. As we know, the Suns will ultimately lose to the Bucks in the finals in 6 games. However, LeBron's dominance within the first round of the playoffs would last 14 years, at least before the loss to the Suns. I think we all can agree, a 14-win first round record is as pro-potent as it gets. Now you may ask, who was LeBron playing in the first round to have such a dominant record? The reason you may not know, or simply don't remember, because a lot of them was sort of lackluster. However, that's not a knock on Bron. His teams were always at the top of the conference, which led to him playing those teams. His first playoff victory came against the Washington Wizards in 2006. It was a complete sweep. In fact, 7 of those 14 wins are sweeps. Other teams he played in the first round of the playoffs were the Detroit Pistons, a young Chicago Bulls team, Philadelphia 76ers, New York Knicks, Milwaukee Bucks, Charlotte Bobcats, Boston Celtics, the Pistons again, the Indiana Pacers, and the Portland Trail Blazers. Now MJ's first round runs was sort of the complete opposite. It wasn't instant dominance like LeBron. In fact, Jordan was swept in his debut playoff series against the Milwaukee Bucks. Now some people would say Jordan's first round competition was far tougher than LeBron's, and candidly, it's hard to disagree. However, that's also because the Bulls would be the lower seed in Jordan's first couple playoff runs. But again, the Eastern Conference was considered the prominent conference at that time. He would then face the robust Boston Celtics, who would go on to win the NBA Finals later on that season. He was swept again next season. MJ and the Chicago Bulls would unfortunately finish the 8th seed and would run into the Boston Celtics again. Same result, it was a sweep. The Celtics would return to the finals again. This time they would lose to the LA Lakers. Jordan would eventually pull through and win his first round playoff series against the Cleveland Cavaliers. Jordan would end up with a 10 wins to 3 losses in the first round record in his career. That's a pretty potent record. Again, it wasn't instant playoff dominance like LeBron's first round record. However, there's a reason for that, and we will unpack that later on in this video. Now on to the second round. LeBron's first Eastern Conference semifinal was against the Detroit Pistons. The Detroit Pistons was at the top of the conference with a whopping 64 wins and 18 losses record. Yeah. Now LeBron and the Cavs record wasn't something to overlook. They were 50 to 32 losses. LeBron and the Cavs would take the Pistons to 7 games, but would unfortunately come up short. The Cavs would next play the New Jersey Nets. Now this New Jersey Nets team was mediocre at best. They finished the season with a 16 offensive rating and a 15 defensive rating. Also finished the season with a 41 win to 41 losses record. He would then run into the complete opposite. He would face the everlasting Big Three Boston Celtics. He would take those guys to 7 games, but with no surprise, he and the Cavs would be defeated. That Celtics team would end up winning the championship. And KG would say the infamous "anything is possible" line. The Cavs would sweep the Atlanta Hawks in the next season, but would come up short in the Eastern Conference Final. Resuming that next season, the Cavs have the best record in the league with 61 wins to 21 losses. Seemed to be one of the favorites to win the championship that year. However, Bron and the Cavs would run into the Big Three Celtics again and lose in 6 games. Now, as we know, LeBron would take his talent to South Beach and join the Miami Heat. He would then face the same Boston team a season later. He would beat them with a gentleman's sweep. Next season, would face a young Indiana Pacers team. A season after that, would face Derrick Rose and the Chicago Bulls. It was also a gentleman's sweep. LeBron would then face his bewitching best friends. However, this time they would be in different jerseys. The Brooklyn Nets would become another victim of a gentleman's sweep. LeBron would then go back home and face the Chicago Bulls in the second round. He swept the Atlanta Hawks that next season, swept the Toronto Raptors again, would then take his talents to Los Angeles and join the Lakers, but would unfortunately miss the playoffs. Now there's a reason why LeBron and the Lakers didn't make the playoffs, but that's another debate. A season after, Bron and the Lakers will pull a legitimate sweep on the Houston Rockets in the second round. Now MJ's second rounds will be a lot similar to LeBron's. A lot of solid competitors. Now MJ didn't make the second round until his fourth time around in the playoffs. That's not a knock on him, it just goes to show how tough the Eastern Conference was back then. With the teams he played, and also his team being constructed the way it was, he didn't have much of a chance. He would make his first second round against the Detroit Pistons. He would lose in 5 games, only winning 1. The next season, he would face the New York Knicks in the semifinals, which would be one of the most physical teams of that time. They were known for their toughness on defense. However, they wasn't a slouch on the offensive end either. They were the 6th best rated offensive team of that season. He would then beat the Philadelphia 76ers in the next season in the semifinals in 5 games. Next season, same results. He faced the 76ers again. He beat them in 5 games again. He and the Chicago Bulls would run into the New York Knicks again next season. They would take the Bulls to 7 games. Again, tough team. To put into context how tough that New York Knicks team was, that same team beat the team that Jordan consistently struggled with. That's the bad boy Detroit Pistons. They beat him in the first round. Jordan and the Bulls would then face the Cleveland Cavaliers in the second round next season. The Bulls would sweep them. Statistically, they was ranked behind the Bulls as the 3rd best offensive team in the league. They were also a spot above the Bulls on the defensive end. They were ranked at 6th while the Bulls were ranked at 7th. The Orlando Magic would be the next second round opponent for MJ and the Bulls. The Bulls would beat them in 6 games. That Magic team was rated the top offensive team of that season. The New York Knicks would once again lose to the Chicago Bulls in round number 2. The Atlanta Hawks would try to challenge the Bulls in the second round of next year's playoffs and would catch a legitimate sweep. The Atlanta Hawks team was the 8th top rated offensive team and the 3rd top rated defensive team of the league that year. Now the last team MJ and the Bulls faced in the second round was the Charlotte Hornets. Easily the worst team of MJ's second round opponents. They were the 11th rated offense of that year and the 15th rated defense of that year. MJ and the Bulls will beat them in a gentleman's sweep. Bron and his conference finals opponents. Bron's first conference finals will be against the Detroit Pistons. Now if you're acquainted with LeBron and his career, this series is familiar simply off his Game 5 performance. He dropped 48 points and scored his team last 25 points to pull through. Now that Detroit Pistons team wasn't what we were accustomed to, especially from the defense aspect. However, they were ranked the 6th best offensive team that year. His next opponent will be the Dwight Howard defensive juggernaut Orlando Magic team. They would lose in 6. Then he would face the youngest MVP in NBA history and the outstanding defensive Chicago Bulls team. He and the Miami Heat will beat them in 5 games. The next season, he and the Miami Heat will beat the Boston Celtics in a 7-game series. The Indiana Pacers would be the next second round opponent. They beat them in 7 games. And then, again, he faces the Indiana Pacers, beat them in a 6-game effort. Bron then returns back home to Cleveland and gives them what they were promised, a ring. He swept the Atlanta Hawks, beat the Toronto Raptors in 6 games, would face a young Boston Celtics team and beat them in 5. The Cavs again would play the Boston Celtics. Their offense was quite lackluster. However, they were the top rated defensive team of that season. Bron would eventually switch conferences and make his debut in the Western Conference Finals against the Denver Nuggets. It was a gentleman's sweep. MJ's first conference finals appearance would unfortunately end in defeat. However, this was against arguably the greatest team of that bad boy Pistons era. Most would list this team as the greatest Detroit Pistons team in Detroit Pistons history. MJ and the Chicago Bulls would run into the Pistons again in the conference finals clash. They would unfortunately lose again. The Detroit Pistons would repeat as NBA champions. The Bulls advances to another Eastern Conference Finals. And guess who they play? Of course, the Detroit Pistons. This time, MJ and the Chicago Bulls would pull through in a sweep. The Bulls would play the Cleveland Cavaliers for their next conference finals. Would pull through in 6 games. Advancing to another conference finals a season later, the Bulls would play the New York Knicks. The New York Knicks was the best defensive team of that season. The Bulls would still win in 6 games. The young but offensively potent Orlando Magic team will beat MJ and the Bulls' next conference finals opponents. It was a sweep. The top-rated Miami Heat team would be MJ's next opponent in the conference finals, and the Indiana Pacers would be MJ's last conference finals opponents. He and the Bulls would beat the Heat in 5 games. They would beat the Pacers in a profound 7-game series. The NBA Finals. Now, as we know, LeBron has a quantity of NBA Finals under his belt, 10 to be exact. His first finals was against the San Antonio Spurs. He and the Cleveland Cavaliers were swept. His next finals opponents was the Dallas Mavericks. This would be his first finals with the Miami Heat. LeBron and the Heat would fall short in 6 games. They would then bounce back a year later and defeat the Oklahoma City Thunder in 5 games. Another year goes by and the Miami Heat are back in the NBA Finals. They face no one other than the San Antonio Spurs. The Miami Heat will win in 7 games. The Miami Heat will run into the San Antonio Spurs once again a season after. They will lose in 5 games. LeBron will make his way back home and play in his 6th NBA Finals and his 2nd Finals with the Cleveland Cavaliers. This would be up against the Golden State Warriors. Golden State would be the top-rated defense and the 2nd-rated offense of that season. Cleveland would lose in 6 games. Cleveland would then bounce back a year later and face the 73-9 Golden State Warriors team. They will make a miraculous comeback from a 3-1 lead. The Cavs will win in 7 games. The Cavs will once again face the Golden State Warriors in the NBA Finals. However, it wasn't the same Warriors team from the previous finals. This Warriors team would acquire one of the greatest scorers to ever exist, Kevin Durant. That team would no surprise be the top-rated offense of that year and the 2nd-best defensive team of that year. Cleveland will lose in 5 games. Another year, another finals. The Cavs will run into the robust Golden State Warriors once again. And this time, they will get swept. LeBron will again change his location and take his talents to LA. He plays his first NBA Finals as the Los Angeles Lakers against the Miami Heat. Bryant and the Lakers will pull through in 6 games. Now, Jordan has had a solid number of NBA Finals under his belt as well. He has 6. His first NBA Finals will be against the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, despite the dominance of the Showtime Lakers, they were clearly not the same team. They were vividly aging. With that being said, they were still a pretty formidable opponent. His 2nd Finals appearance will be up against the Portland Trail Blazers. MJ and the Bulls will win in 6 games. His 3rd appearance will be up against the Phoenix Suns and the MVP of that season, Charles Barkley. That Suns team was the top-rated offensive team of that season. The Bulls would win in 6 games. MJ and the Chicago Bulls would make another Finals appearance after Jordan would return from his quick retirement. They would face the Seattle Supersonics. They were the 2nd-rated defensive team of that season and the 3rd-rated offensive team of that year. It shows you how elite that Supersonic team was. However, as elite as that team was, MJ and the Bulls would defeat them in 6 games. MJ's next Finals opponents would be the season's MVP Karl Malone and the Utah Jazz. They would have prevailed against the Utah Jazz in 6 games. A year later, same result. MJ and the Bulls would beat the Utah Jazz in 6 games. Now, after going through those opponents these competitors have faced, who do you think faced the tougher competition? Me personally, I'm going with the cliche answer here. And that's MJ has had better competition leading to the NBA Finals, and LeBron has had better NBA Finals competition. I mean, when stacking these teams up against one another, I don't know how one can make an argument for that not being true. The competition LeBron has faced leading into the NBA Finals, in my opinion, doesn't stack up to Jordan's. The toughest opponent LeBron has faced before reaching the NBA Finals is arguably the 2008 Boston Celtics. Although that team will go on to win the NBA Finals that year, I think we all can agree that Boston Celtics team candidly underachieved. 1 title in 5 years when the expectation was supposed to be a dynasty. Now let's compare them to Jordan's toughest pre-final opponent. Most would say Jordan's toughest opponent before reaching the NBA Finals were the 1986 Boston Celtics. I mean, really, is there any debate on which team is better? Now, NBA Finals opponents are a bit different. Most would state that the 2017 Golden State Warriors was LeBron's greatest NBA Finals opponent. Now, how does that dynamic team match up against MJ's toughest Finals opponent? The 1998 Utah Jazz is who most would say is MJ's toughest Finals opponent. The 2017 Golden State Warriors, the 1998 Utah Jazz. Again, is there any reason to even try to dispute this narrative? It's obvious who's better. Now with that being said, I don't think Jordan's finals competition was lackluster. That 1998 Utah Jazz team is arguably the greatest team to never win a championship. Same with LeBron pre-final opponents. As much as I think it's almost blasphemous to compare the 2008 Boston Celtics to the 1986 Boston Celtics team. That 2008 Boston Celtics team was one of the greatest teams in NBA history as well. But however you want to slice it, these are two of the greatest to ever do it. And to be great, you must face great competition. And both competitors have. I'm aware that not everybody would agree with my opinion on this topic, and that's okay. It's all subjective. However, I do want to know y'all opinions down below. So make sure you like and subscribe, and comment your opinions down below. I'm out. Deuces.